Hey, what is up, guys? Let's build up our knowledge onto our second episode. I know on the first episode we pretty much highlighted some of the main or the basic items as far as opening is concerned. So, more about general principles and whatnot. And today's video, I think we should highlight some of the middle game ideas and how you should actually think about um, the game as you approach it. So let's get into it. So let's keep things somewhat similar as episode 1 as far as the opening. So we'll go ahead and continue with the same Roy Lopez setup. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. So this resembles the Roy Lopez. a6 main line and bishop a5 also the main move as far as white. So knight f6, d3 we pretty much covered up until these moments where we were suggesting moves like c3, save the bishop, take the bishop back in case there's knight a5. So I'm not gonna go over all of that again. And if you're kind of confused, then I suggest you guys check out the first episode first before you come into this one. Bishop c5, and now, so in chess there are always traps. So we were considering taking this knight and then taking this pawn. In this case, okay, this is like an easy tactic to spot. Are we able to win a pawn in this case without any trouble? So I'll give you guys a few seconds. Is it possible to win this knight? I mean, take this knight, so trading your bishop for the knight, and then try to win this pawn. Is it possible? Or is it a good idea? So it turns out if you spotted queen d4, then it doesn't work. So what am I talking about? Let's take the knight. So d takes bishop. Now the queen is opened up. So the queen can go to d4. Why is the queen interested to go on d4? Well, to create a battery against f2. So for the moment, the king is the only one attacking or defending f2. So if you try to take this pawn, it's not free. Queen d4, it's a double attack, so you're losing the knight, or otherwise you get checkmated. So you have to worry about protecting f2 somehow, either castling or putting a piece, and then you're just losing the knight. So this is already sort of the middle game ideas that you should keep in mind. Sometimes your opponents kind of give you or allow a pawn to be taken for free. 9 out of 10 times that pawn is a poison pawn. In this case, that pawn was in the middle of the board, so you should always watch out for tactics like this where you just kind of get double attacked, and you always kind of have to watch out what can, as soon as you take a piece and your opponent recaptures that piece, diagonals are opened. Files and diagonals are open. So for example, as soon as we take this knight with our bishop, which file is open? Well, the D file. The D file is open for the queen. Which diagonal is open? If you want to be very technical, the C8 to H3 diagonal is open. So you always have to watch out. I mean, what's the consequences of my bishop taking the knight? Well, those two things. So let's continue. So instead of taking the knight, so we also mentioned this thing. So pushing the pawn to c3 to save the bishop, because and this variation where black didn't play b5, they took the bishop out first. Well, now things are a bit different. I mean, white has this move. I mean, it's one of the moves. White could have castled. They could have played knight bd2. Remember this idea with the knight going to g3? With the knight on b1 usually, and these setups like to go to g3 to put another attacker close to the king side, or another piece involved and somehow attack the king side. But c3 in this position, what's the idea for white? As we covered, white wants to play d4. White wants to control the full center. And when you're thinking about this move, I mean, it shouldn't be difficult to understand what is white's trying after c3. Of course, they're trying to play d4 and control all of the center with 2 pawns. So, for the moment, you have to think this way. You have to, if you're playing black, from black's perspective, you have to think that the white's king is not castled. So there will be stuff against the white king. Because as soon as pawns gets traded, a diagonal opens up. For example, if white plays d4, you take, and if they take with their pawn, fine. You're like, why did I give white the full center? Well, this diagonal opened up for the bishop. So as long as this square is not controlled by white, well, now black is ready to give these annoying checks. So that's the thing you need to keep in mind. And these are the ways that you can kind of get away, or because the whole point is to not give your opponent full control of the center, and your pieces are pretty much not doing anything, not attacking the king, and if you have to retreat your bishops backwards, that's already a bad sign. So if you can give these checks with these diagonal opened up to the king, those are pretty much the best moves. In a sense, you kind of don't want to give your opponent the full control of the center and hope for the best. I mean, that's not how you will get advantageous positions. So in this case, for black, usually they kick out the bishop, like b5. So white's not ready to play d4. They gotta worry about the bishop. Let's say the bishop dropped back to c2. The bishop could have went to b3 too, to go on this diagonal. But just for the sake of this example, white wants to reroute the knight and kind of play d4 later. So what's wrong with playing d4 right now? Like, let's say black castle, then white lashed out with d4. Well, the king is in the middle. So for this instant, you don't have to really worry about white playing d4, because their king is in the middle of the board. That's the thing. And if we turn on computer's evaluation, I mean, it does say d4, and then you take, check, knight c3. In this case, no, there is no knight d4 because the bishop is attacking. So d5. d5 is fine, and then you can even move forward like this. So you're already creating problems just because the king was not castled. The knight is pinned. So let's look at what just happened. We gave white the full control of the center. Just this one check caused so many problems for white. Check, knight c3. Okay, this pawn is defended by one piece, the bishop, so we cannot take it. Why not put another attacker on that pawn? If white takes, we're happy. We can even take with the queen because the knight is pinned. Even knight takes is fine. I mean, you're just piling up on this piece and you're trying to win a pawn. So yeah, so you kind of and by the way, black's interested in this file opening up. Why? The king is in the middle of the board, so white shouldn't even think about taking on d4, because this is terrible. Yeah, rook e8, check. If the king goes to f1, Usually you don't want to make moves like this where you haven't castled and you're kind of, this is called white's trying to castle by hand. They're gonna try to play g3 king g2 and bring the rook over. That takes too many moves. So if white's forced to play king f1, this is already bad news for white. So even after bishop e3, let's say they block the check because the king was on check. Knight takes is fine. Queen takes, the computer is like, queen takes is better. What about knight takes? You're just piling up. There is way too much pressure, and black is just, white's gonna lose a pawn. Either way. So let's back up. So they have to keep the center closed. So white tried to dominate the center, but it was too early. And now black has a defender on e4, so they can actually jump their knight forward. When your opponent attacks your knight like this, you actually want to move forward if there are things like, if the position is kind of like opening up and the king is not castled, you don't want to retreat backwards. That's the thing. If the king is in the middle of the board, you kind of, even for the sake of, I don't know, losing a pawn or two, if you can somehow keep the king in the middle and delay the king from castling, that's a good thing. And the thing is, your opponent is going to react to this knight being attacked twice, so they're not going to be like, okay, if I just castle, I might lose a pawn. So they're going to try to defend this knight somehow, like queen d3 or something. Is queen d3 a move? I mean, bishop f5 is very annoying. Now you have all these pins going, and the next thing you know, your opponent will blunder somehow. So queen d3 is already bad. So instead of queen d3, so this knight is attacked twice. What should white do? Yeah, the best move apparently is to just castle, give up the pawn. So let's say knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. So I mean, black has to be careful. How should they win this pawn? Because there are tactics. So this is like, the role is reversed now. Earlier, black had in the opening, if we go, where was it? So here, white had this tactic. I mean, black had this tactic on f2. Now the role is reversed. So let's go into this line. So white castled, and now h7 is a problem. So if black is carelessly takes on c3 without even a single thought, they will get in trouble. Like if they take the knight with the knight, this is a blunder. Well, it's not really a blunder. You're not supposed to take this pawn with the bishop. You just have to retreat. Why? If you take, thinking, oh, your opponent has to move the rook. No, they don't. They can attack your bishop and threaten checkmate. So queen d3. Attacks the bishop and tries to go to h7 with the help of their own bishop. So if you were thinking, oh, I'm just going to win the rook, it doesn't work. You just lost yourself a piece because h7 is the problem now. So you always have to protect your own territory first, or your own king side especially. And if you take this piece with the bishop, then this is different. Why is this different? Because if white takes, well, they lost a piece. They took. If the knight takes, the pawn, well, now this is different. Does queen d3 work anymore? By the way, the queen is attacked. Queen d3, does it lose a piece? How can we defend these two pieces at the same time? h7 and the knight. Of course, knight e4. So the knight is able to hop back and forth like this. So it was very important to win the pawn in this way. And yeah, this is fine. I mean, white's gonna try to win the pawn back, but you can even play f5, I think. Yeah, f5, bishop f5 is even stronger. Knight b4 is even stronger because you're just pretty much piling up. And once you take the bishop, you're on the rook. So yeah, black is doing great. And by the way, this is how you should approach problems like this. If your opponent's trying to win a pawn like this, think of other moves. Don't react to the same piece as I mentioned on episode 1. So the knight's trying to take this knight, and for the moment, the knight is pinned to that pawn. And away. I mean, you can move it, but you'll get checkmated. And you can't go into defense to defend the pawn like this, because there is a pawn on this annoying e5 pawn is actually an advantage to white's position, because they can take a piece if it goes to f6. So yeah, you always have to look at these other moves. So don't react to the same piece being attacked. Look at other options, like knight b4 is a strong move. Attacks the queen, attacks the bishop, and so on. So let's do a recap, because I think that was a lot of things all at once. So it was the Roy Lopez opening, bishop b4, a6, bishop a4 main line. So knight c6, and we already mentioned you can't win this pawn because of queen d4. So you always have to be careful. d3, bishop c5, again, you cannot win this pawn. Even though you're getting rid of the defender, there are tactics on f2. So you kind of have to be visual, like, what will happen if I try to win this pawn? What can my opponent do? So you kind of have to see these moves in your head. That's how you become stronger. If you can see 2 to 3 moves ahead, I mean, this is saying how many moves? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult to see 3 to 4 moves ahead for now. So bishop takes knight. As we mentioned, it's playable, but it's not the best way to play this, because you're giving up the bishop for pretty much no reason. It's too early to do this, so I don't recommend taking the knight like this. So black plays b5, bishop b3 is a move if you want to keep an eye on f7, but if you want to go to c2, the idea of this is to protect e4 and expand. And black can't really stop this d4 move. It's just like some positions you will play over the board, such as this one, and you're like, oh, I wish I didn't play this setup because my opponent can actually take full control of the center. Well, in a lot of Roy Lopez setups, especially with these knight moves like this, I mean, it's almost inevitable for black to stop this, unless if black plays c5. So there are ways to try to clamp down on d4. What am I talking about? So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, this, knight f6, d3. If black plays b5 now, bishop b3, knight a5, I think this is pretty... No, you have to defend c5 somehow. So bishop c5. And if white plays c3, try to go d4. Yeah, I guess so. So I guess if white plays an early c3 d4, it's pretty much inevitable for black to like stop this idea. But it doesn't mean that, like, if you were playing black, it doesn't mean your position just sucks. Like, doesn't mean that. It just means you just have to react to the position in the right way. So d4 is coming. You should be thinking, okay, if they play d4, I'm gonna give this annoying check. I'm gonna try to play d5, attack their pawn, and that's another key principle. If white's trying to expand in the center, white should also do the same. I mean, white should try to go d5. Because both sides are fighting for the center. And if one side doesn't fight for the center, your position kind of becomes worse. You may not lose a piece or a pawn, but like down the road, it's just gonna, white's pieces will just overwhelm the position, and you'll somehow like drop a pawn, or you're just gonna be forced to lose a piece or a pawn, something like that. So but yeah, so this idea is pretty much inevitable if white really wants to play c3 d4 very early. So after b5, we said bishop c2, not bishop b3. Bishop b3 is like another position. You can also try this if you really want. d5. Can black go d5? Yeah, so d5 is like the best move apparently. But there are other possible. I mean, you also don't wanna resolve the the center of the board too quickly either. d5 is like, okay, you're just trading pieces, and white hasn't really played d4, so it's almost like a dry position. I mean, yes, you do get the diagonal, but you want to keep some level of risk, so to speak. Maybe that's a bit more advanced, but yeah, we'll definitely talk about what do I mean by some level of risk and later on my later videos. But for now, d5, it's like, okay, you take, the knight takes, or even the queen takes. I mean, fine. Black gets a very active pieces, so white has to be very careful. No, actually, d5 is a pretty nice move. I mean, it opens things up very quickly. So if white went for an early c3 d4, so d5 is an option. So c3, b5, and then yeah, you can play d5. Takes. I was thinking this is a bit more dry, this position. By that I mean there aren't much tactics, but white has to be careful. There's the bishop is coming out, and if you try to stop it, usually this is a nice move to stop the bishop from pinning the knight to the queen. Black's position is better apparently, but not by much. Minus 0.3, 0.2. So black still hasn't castled. The rook is getting ready. So I guess this will be a nice game for both sides. I mean, black is super active. Look at these knights, like ready to jump in at any moment. The bishops are active, the queen. c3. So we said bishop c2, d5. Instead of d5, if black castled, And if they don't play d4, if they castle, you just continue normally. D5 is always an option. Yeah, I mean, the computer loves d5. I feel like it opens up the position a lot for black. And if white doesn't take this pawn, let's say h3, black will take, probably take, takes. You can play bishop e6, it's fine. Or even bishop b7 I think was fine. Apparently this is getting in these diagonals is open, or controlling these squares is more important. But yeah, I think some of the key takeaways from this video would be, if the king hasn't castled, there will be stuff available for you in the position. So don't kind of get too worried about the center. Like if your opponent controls the full center, it's a key part of the game to control the center and have an advantage as far as like controlling, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be any good play left in the position. So you always have to watch out. For example, this diagonal is opened up in this position, and there were tactics in the middle of the board earlier on f2. So you always have to watch out, and sometimes there are like sacrifices on f2, especially with the knight, so things like that. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something from this episode. And on the next one, we'll probably cover more tactics. So we'll probably do middle game like calculation type of stuff on episode 3. So yeah, take care.